Thanks, Joe. I'm Billy Black. I'm the Regional Public Image Coordinator. I think I've been calling myself the Rotary Public Image Chair, and Terry said, quit doing that. So that's to give myself the correct name. And welcome to our masterclass on working with the media. I'd like to introduce a couple of our team. Dawn Rochelle is an existing team member. Joe is an existing team member. Ken Fleeson, and he's from up in the Pennsylvania area. And then we've got Ashley. There's Ashley Ashley and Joe are actually going to roll off. So, but they're already hooked in, so they're going to still be doing things. And then we have Hamilton from the Virginia area, and Chris. Chris Justice is between Dawn and I in Virginia. So welcome everyone. And I'm going to roll it over to Joe.
Well, thank you, Billy. And Billy is our fearless leader. I'm going to share screen here. And if you, whenever you get a chance, let me share screen.
Oh, okay.
All good.
Maybe.
We're getting there. So Billy is our fearless leader. She is our, as she mentioned, Rotary Public Image Coordinator, which means that for the northern part of the East Coast, she is in charge of Rotary representing itself. So about 20,000 Rotarians turn to her and our team to learn how to spread the good message of Rotary and help more good things happen in our communities. So tonight, we're very privileged to have a few speakers that have had more than a couple of years of experience, not to age them, in the media outlets. So I will, let me share here. Thank you. And we will, everybody loves Canva. So before that, just to introduce our team and what we all have going on tonight. So we're going to have a panel discussion this evening about Rotary, or about sharing with our media partners and working better with them, building those relationships. For those that are following our Public Image Zone 33 calendar, we have a few more events and a surprise for you this evening. So we had March, we're having a master class on membership retention and public image together. So how to represent your clubs as members. In April, we have leadership training. Let's make sure if you're a Rotary Public Image chair, if you're in the governor chain, that your folks are registering for that and making sure that you're ready for a great weekend. We have a ton of good stuff for the district folks there. And then in June, we have running a digital marketing campaign. Now, we're very happy to announce tonight in February, with all the great feedback that the zone has given us and how happy everybody has been with the master classes and even the open working hours that we've had, we just couldn't quit this year. So we've had a lot of folks asking for a photography panel. We pulled some strings. Mike Jones helped with this too, and we got some pretty darn good NFL, NBA, NHL photographers coming out to give us a couple pointers from the very most basic to the more advanced. So we're very excited for the rest of our year, as well as for a couple of us rotating off. Here is our current public image committee. So find your district. If you're watching this at home or you are the public image coordinator, make sure that you're making your connections with us. A few of us are going to be rotating out. Like I said, I think Hannah, Ashley, Ken, and myself are rotating out. We have a bunch of new committee members coming in. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're just helping figure out how to get these roles filled and get a better support network together for all of you. So make sure you make your connection with your district or zone committee, and we can support you all in the best way possible, representing your districts. But I could speak for Ken, Ashley, and myself, and Hannah. We've all been real happy to serve on this committee, and it's really broadened our Rotary expertise and how much we can do with the cause. So appreciate all of that. Now, without any further ado, I wanted to introduce you to our expert panelists for the evening. Now, I did ask these folks for bios, so I hope that I don't embarrass them too much. But we do have three exceptional gentlemen joining us this evening with a broad swath of media and professional experiences to share. So if I may, I'm going to start with Tim Radford. Tim's I first met Tim during the thing that struck me with Tim is his board membership. So anybody that knows me knows that I love serving on various boards. And when I see Tim's business card and all the various roles that he serves within his community, I was immediately attracted to Tim. Now, learning more about him, I found out that Tim is everything that he represents to this community and does tons within his town. He runs this WKRK down in North Carolina. And I tell you what, just cruising through his, I would say, summary of accomplishments, I would say it's just, Tim, I tell you what, they say you get one chance to say no in Rotary, and I think you took that to heart, sir, and very much appreciate it, and looking forward to some of your comments tonight. So
thank you.
Guy Fletcher, often misconstrued with Chevy Chase, and some still say that the movie was based on him, is the Rotary Club of Frederick's one of their main advocates here. So Guy has served in a few different roles with his Rotary Club, from chairing events, being I believe you're now past president, I believe.
No, not leadership.
You're incoming. He's just been behind the scenes.
And before you make my leadership really mad, it's not the Rotary Club of Frederick. It's the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek.
I'm already in trouble because of the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek in the area of Frederick. Sorry, I'm going to hear about that one. We'll just stricken that from the record. So anyway, but Guy's, as a professional, has been writing for over 35 years. So he's been with PR companies, written for Fortune 500 companies. For the past 14 years, he's been editing the Frederick magazine. So many of our communities have these localized magazines that have local interest pieces, spotlight various things going on, and do a whole lot keeping the communities together and representing them in a very unique way. So let me see if I missed anything. And his wife, Robin, and they have 2 adult children and 1 grandchild. Guys, sorry I missed that one. So that's pretty sweet. Lastly, a good buddy of mine, Mike Jones. So this is Mike and his lovely wife, Erin. Mike is a unique individual in many respects, but what he lacks for in looks, I will say that he makes up for in professional credibility. Mike is one of the most credible writers that I've ever had the privilege to know. He's an award-winning syndicated reporter. He currently writes for the Observer Publishing Company and the Observer Reporter in Washington, Pennsylvania. In Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties, very rural counties, but he covers them very well. He's actually earned himself a unique nickname recently that I'll share with you. In journalism, he started at the Charleston Daily Mail. So Dan and our West Virginia friends probably familiar with that. All the way back in 2005. I know he looks young. He's getting much older as the years go by, and been entrusted with covering their Air National Guard division. For 2 decades, he's been working in print publications, online media, websites, industry expertise, through the upheaval in many of our lives, as well as in the media world as well. He and his wife Erin also own this lovely brewery named Mondays, if you're ever in McMurray, Pennsylvania. And if you want to ask him, maybe on an off topic, his new nickname is the DA Slayer, and he covers our region with vigor and expertise and professionalism that we don't deserve. So again, these are our 3 panelists, folks, and we are very privileged to have them this evening. So without any further ado, let me go to our first question. So sorry if I embarrassed any of you, but I do appreciate you guys playing along, and with all love and all that. So all right, so let me start out. Okay, so gentlemen, let me introduce yourselves as well. If I missed anything, or you can correct me, I'm sure Ashley will be correcting me about the Carroll Creek slip here in a little bit. But anything else you'd like to share about your professional background or where you're at now, real briefly? Let's start with Tim.
Well, I was really concerned why you invited me, this young kid that's broadcasting. But then when we were doing the introductions there, I wrote down and I did the math. I've been in radio for 34 years now, so I'm no longer that young kid anymore. I've owned the radio station for 28 years. So, and honestly, when I was club president, I took everything I've learned in my radio on how to make an effective commercial to make money for businesses out there, and I applied that to our club. So that's probably what I want to touch on today, how to be effective instead of just, filling 30 seconds or 60 seconds of radio time.
Thank you, Tim. Let's go to Guy.
Yeah, as you were very kind enough to point out, I'm not Erwin Fletcher. I've been a writer for most of my career. I've actually had 3 different careers. I worked as a newspaper reporter for 10 years, which were fantastic experience. I worked in corporate PR for another decade or so. And then for the last 14 years, I've had this job, which, it's just been great, being the editor of the magazine. So never have moved more than maybe 35 miles in this entire experience. And proud member of the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Well, I've been in 2 decades, and I've really seen, over that time, the changes in how, we report news, how people consume news. And as there are fewer and fewer local reporters out there, we've also had to rely heavily on local organizations and businesses to send in information that we're able to put out there to help us out. Also like to say, at one time I was a Rotarian in Waynesburg, PA. So I was part of the club at one time.
Thank you for that correction, sir. Appreciate that. So, all right. So, gentlemen, let me start with this. So, Mike, I think you said it well. We've seen quite a bit of change in, I think I could look on the call here, most of our careers in how we communicate and the way we communicate. If you had to share one point, how would you have a club communicate more effectively or more modernly based on what you've seen in your various places? Let's start back with Mike.
Well, the first thing I would do is I'd make a personal connection with the reporters or the editors for those news organizations in your community. It's one thing to send out a press release, and when we receive it, we don't know who it's from or how it was generated. So when you make that personal connection with someone, it makes a little bit more sense when on the press release with whatever information. When you do send those, obviously, you want to be very concise in what you're sending. Sometimes people will send 3 or 4 page press releases, and it really gets lost in the shuffle of what the point is. And so, when we have smaller news staffs, and we're supposed to take this information and package it, it might be a very short story or a brief for an announcement of what the club is doing. The more concise you can make it for us, the easier it is for us to package and put in the paper.
Guy?
Yeah, just to jump on top of that, same thing. Make relationships. Get to know the reporters. Get to know the writers. Know the people in your community who are covering what you're doing. People in my profession can really sniff out a story pitch in a hurry, and it's much more effective when it's coming from someone you know. Because we all get spam mail and spam calls and story pitches that really are just all day long. But when it's coming from someone it makes a big difference. So that's how I would encourage. Make those connections.
Don't sniff the pitch. I like something. There's something there. Tim, anything with the radio world? I mean, the world of radio has changed a ton. Like, what are you seeing that work, or how would you do it differently?
Absolutely. A lot of radio stations are so automated now. So there's not a lot of staff to handle. A lot of stations no longer have news departments. That some of them have voice tracking where the announcer's sitting in other cities now. So it's really important to get in touch or in front of the station owner. And honestly, it is really great when you have the local radio station or the local newspaper publisher in your club, because they are professional communicators. They see I'm in my club. We have our publisher of our newspaper in the club. So a lot of the guests that we have, there will be a story in that the next week because he's there at that meeting. He found it interesting. We also have the Chamber of Commerce. They are really great at networking to businesses. Our current president is the director of the Chamber. it really starts at having those great people in your club. And for radio, it's really nice too. Whenever we do things a little differently, there are radio commercials on Brand Central. Download those, get those public service messages out to the radio station so they can just air them in their unsold inventory. We have these 3-minute commercial breaks. We don't always sell the entire 3 minutes. There may be an extra 15 or 30 seconds left that a station can throw in a public service message promoting Rotary. And it's also nice having that in the local Rotary Club's voice. So that's another thing. And radio stations like mine also, we don't just stop at radio. We are huge on Facebook. We do a lot of Facebook Live feeds and interviews with local things like Rotary Club and the events. Having a live video on scene is really impactful.
And I think that you tipped us to something we're going to touch on by the end. Radio Joe, be prepared. We've seen some of this, doing it in your local voice, and we're going to talk about that when we button this up. But let me transition here. So you three are exceptionally nice. I've spoke to all three of you. You're very accommodating, even Mike Jones. Some folks are a little intimidated talking to the media, right? They're afraid they're going to say something wrong. They're going to do it in the wrong way. When somebody comes to you to speak to you, whether it be the local publication, the newspaper, the radio, or whatever, however you want to speak to it, what would you say to be prepared? How would you be better prepared to discuss to the media? And could you maybe make us feel a little bit better? I know the first time Mike Jones had his notebook, I was very intimidated, but anyway, but yeah. Let's go Guy first. Oh, sorry, bud. Unmute yourself. I did it too.
Yeah. The first thing you do is just do some simple research about the publication or media outlet you're going to be dealing with. Learn a little bit about them. What kind of publication or broadcast or electronic media are they? How often are they publishing? What type of content do they usually put in their packages? That kind of just pretty simple research. When people come to me and they know just very little bit about what we do and how we do it, that gives them a huge leg up as far as I'm concerned. And it puts the relationship at a very, it makes it much more at ease for both of us. That if they just do and you could, when I say research, I'm talking 10 seconds on a Google search, really. And you can find out a lot about what the type of information that media source needs.
Just be real. Yeah, that's yeah. Mike, you want to add on to that one?
Yeah, Tim, I thought what Tim said earlier was interesting, because when I was a part of the Waynesburg Rotary, I got plenty of great story ideas just by sitting there and having lunch and talking to people through that process. But I think, from the journalist side, we're able to kind of, build on those story ideas. But, one thing, and you may already do this, is make sure you have a point person with your group to be able to reach out. I mean, sometimes if you have too many people reaching out at one time, or if someone's uncomfortable, speaking to journalists or on air, that might be an issue. So, if you can find someone who's comfortable in building that partnership or building that bond, you can be a very reliable source for us.
Something I would add there is we try at our clubs to have our public image folks, but one point I would add is, let's say somebody works with or closely to, or like in our case, was married to the local reporter. They could just do that part of it. They don't need to be the end all be all. And our public image chairs are, although they are mini PR teams, don't all have to do everything, and not everybody can do everything. So if somebody has an interest in this, or is writing, or they have the voice, they say, I have the, what is it? The face for radio or something like that, but something like that, you just elect those people to do their role. Tim, what else can I do to be better prepared when I go on the radio? Because that's usually where they send me. I can barely spell, and it's, but like you said, so Tim, how do I not be so intimidated? Like, what do you do to get ready when you got to go on live?
Find the right people to talk to. I mean, I've talked to some newspaper reporters that I'm intimidated around because I feel like they're gotcha reporters. And even one with me being mayor now, I'm quoted every week in the newspaper. Well, I like some of the reporters that we have, and we actually have another newspaper reporter in our club, but she asks questions that kind of put you on the spot that I'm not prepared to answer. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'll say, well, I'll text you my quote in a bit. Let me think about it for a moment. And a lot of people are not comfortable on the spot. But one of my favorite quotes, people are extremely comfortable with me in my town because they've heard me on the radio since 1989. So one of my favorite quotes is, to be loved, be lovable. So if you think about it, if people feel comfortable with you, they're not going to have an issue talking with you live on the air. They're going to trust you to not ask those gotcha questions, that you can just have a decent conversation with folks. And that's a great way to let folks know about Rotary in general and what your club is doing.
Man, that is a great takeaway, Tim. Thank you. To be loved, be lovable. I love that. Okay. So we as Rotarians have an initiative to have more impact with our stories, with our works of good, with everything we do. What to you three makes an impactful story, and what can we do to tell more impactful stories? Let's go. Not to put you back on the spot, Tim, but I'll put you back on the spot. You can text me your quote later if you need to.
All right, sounds good. Another quote I learned a long time ago, because my radio station is a Christian radio station. And the one thing that I learned a long time ago is a quote from Maya Angelou. It says, people may not remember exactly what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So I have a very close relationship with my listeners, a lot of seniors in my audience, and I've gone to meet them at the nursing home to say hi, because that demographic, radio people are celebrities to them. I recently had someone pass away that her life goal was to meet me in person. So I went to meet her in person, and it made her feel so good. She was like fixing up her hair because I was her radio boyfriend. So that is one of the things I want to convey too. And I use my whole, as far as how we make money for our advertisers, it is all in the message. People have this whole what's in it for me mentality when they're listening to a message. They're since 1958. They don't care that they have these brands in stock. For example, if you're a dentist, they don't advertise, oh, we do root canals and we pull your teeth. What they advertise is, would you like an amazing smile? People hear that and they think, what's in it for me? So when we're advertising our Rotary Club, what is in it for the person listening? Why would they want to join? It's not all the great things that we're doing, but it's what does it mean to them?
Thanks. Guy.
Yeah, and just to add to what Mike and Tim have already said about being a Rotarian and also a member of the media, I've gotten many great stories from Rotary, from people pitching me stories about things in Rotary and non-Rotary things. And conversely, I've been able to help the club whenever they, help them promote things. It's truly a symbiotic relationship. So it's been great, I think, for both sides to have someone in the local media in the club. At least I hope it's been. As far as how to get impactful stories out, the one thing I always tell people, and this isn't just the Rotary Club or all the service clubs or any other organization, whenever someone comes to me with a story idea, I'm always looking for the bigger story. I'm looking for the trend. Don't come to me and say, I used to have a friend, by the way, who still is a member of another Rotary Club. This is before I was involved in Rotary. And she would say, you should do a story about our club because we're doing X. And what I would always say is, it's very hard for me to do a story about your club because then I'm going to have every other club and not just Rotary asking for a story. I said, show me where it's part of something bigger, a bigger trend in the community of giving to a certain social good. And then, then we can have a story. Because quite frankly, would you rather be a very tiny story in the back of my magazine, or would you rather be part of a huge story? And I think you'd rather be a small part of a big story than just have a little story. So I always encourage anyone who comes to me who thinks they have a great story, and they might, try to think of the bigger story that's there with it.
Cool. Mike.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, how does it impact your community, right? And so part of that is you want to make these story pitches personal to your community. So, you know, Rotary does these huge water projects every year, right? I mean, they every year they you know, raise money for these you know, rain catching projects in these third world countries. Well, where we were in Waynesburg, there's 2 areas right now that are having water quality problems, one from well issues and the other one from sanitary plant. And so if you can connect people about, you know, rather than being, here's all the things we're doing in, you know, for third world countries, people back home can understand, well, yeah, I'm dealing with these issues too. That's why it's important over there as well. And so if you can make that connection with people and make it personal to them, they'll probably be more interested in it.
Excellent answers. It's like you guys have done this for a couple of years or something. I just don't know how you know so much about this stuff. But anyway, so okay, so not to put everybody on the spot, and I get to see a lot of different professions in my field, and it's really cool. And you guys have some pretty cool jobs, in my opinion. Could you share an interesting story from your career? Keep in mind we are filming this, but if you have an interesting story from your career, I would love to hear it. Guy, let's go with you.
I really had to think about this one because I really did. And I thought of a story back when I was working in corporate communications, PR for a very large utility company. And very large utility companies are involved in all kinds of call in my office from CNN. And they said, we just got a press release that Greenpeace just climbed up one of your smokestacks. And I said, well, what's the name of the power plant? And I wrote it down, and I told the guy at CNN, I called him right back. And I called the plant manager. This is a plant out in the Ohio Valley somewhere. And I said, hey, I just got a call from CNN that Greenpeace says they're on one of our stacks. And he goes, no, I've been here all day. There's no one up there. I said, well, would you do me a favor? Look out your window and see if they are. And like a minute later, he gets back on the phone. He goes, yeah, they're up there. And they got a giant flag with skull and crossbones on. I'm like, oh boy, it's like this crisis communications disaster day. But you know, then everything happened. This was right after 9/11, by the way. So security was a huge issue anyway. So and despite this, we let a bunch of people in our plant. But no, everything all ended well, I guess. But that was probably one of the crazier stories from my days in corporate communications.
Jeez. All right, Mike. I know you got a bunch of them.
Well, and I probably can't tell most of them, to be honest with you. But right after I graduated college, I went to West Virginia University. My first job was in Charleston, West Virginia, for the Daily Mail, like Joe had mentioned earlier. So 3 weeks into my first job, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast, and we all remember the devastation and the video and pictures from you know, the flooding of the Lower Ninth Ward. So there were a lot of evacuation efforts from all across the country, and one of them was the 130th Airlift Wing in Charleston. And so a few days afterwards, when everything was getting activated, they were getting ready to head down to New Orleans. And my editor was looking, and they were allowing one reporter from TV and one reporter from news to go. And so I was the low man on the tone pole. There was no way I was going to go. So he looks to one reporter and asks him if he wanted to go. And he said, it was a Labor Day weekend. So he said, no, I've got barbecues to go to, so I don't want to do that. He asked another reporter, and the reporter was afraid of flying for whatever reason. So I'm the last one. He looks at me. And I said, oh, yeah, I'll go. And he gets back on with the general and says, yeah, he's got a stomach of steel. So I spent the next 5 days flying with the 130th Airlift Guard into New Orleans, into other places, evacuating people out of Louis Armstrong International Airport. You know, and that's 3 weeks into my journalism career. And so after that, it was quite a startling experience considering what you saw, what you experienced. But afterward, it was kind of like, well, I guess my journalism career is all downhill from here.
I would disagree. We have high hopes and aspirations for you, but it certainly does show. And yeah, so Tim.
A situation that still haunts me to this day is, okay, picture it, Murphy, 1989. I was 16. I had just finished training with the older gentleman who was planning to retire soon. So I was on the very first weekend where I was left by myself to run the station. We reached 3 states, North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. Still a small station, but our geographic location, we're right on the borders of all 3. The station owner at that time, we're an agricultural area, a lot of farming. So back then, the station owner had really strict rules. You have to do time and temperature every 15 minutes. Right now it's 9 o'clock and 42 degrees in Murphy. And his other rule was, well, we read funeral announcements because we only have a newspaper that comes out once a week. So a lot of people had passed and were buried by the time they would find out in the newspaper. So we read the obituaries for our local funeral homes every day. And the rule on that was after you finish reading the obituary, you have to go back to the very top and read their name and age again. Otherwise, people will call in and say, I didn't hear who that was. Can you repeat it? So those were the 2 rules. Well, that first weekend by myself, I was so nervous. I read an obituary and I went back at the very top. I said, and once again, name of the deceased is Mary Jones. She was 98 degrees. Yeah, I got the time and temperature confused with her age. So that's something that haunts me still to this day.
Well, Tim, I'm sure she forgives you, and I'm sure it was.
I feel bad for family listening.
Well, I tell you what, though, those are pretty entertaining stories, and thank you because it lets us know, one, don't take yourself too seriously. You're never going to get it right, and even the pros sometimes don't get it right, and just be prepared. There were some great points in that. So, okay, I know we're about halfway through our time. I have one more question. We have a couple more questions. Dawn had a question I think she wanted to pose, but you know what, Dawn, let's go with your question, and then we're going to have some open panel and have some of our attendees have a chance to ask our panelists stuff. So Dawn, go ahead.
Absolutely. I actually have 2 now, right? If I can have 2, I'm really curious to have each of you answer, how has Rotary helped your career? You know, what are the connections that you've made because you're a Rotarian?
I'll go first. It's helped me incredibly. The contacts I have in the community are much greater than before I was in Rotary. So that alone has been immense. I get, again, like I say, people will come up to me at meetings and tell me about story ideas they have about stuff that isn't related to Rotary. And that's great. There's literally been things that end up on the cover of the magazine because of things I've heard through Rotary. That's happened. So that's been great. So yeah, it's been, you know, it's been a real benefit for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. How about you, Tim?
All right. When I first joined Rotary 4 years ago, I was a radio station owner, and that was basically all I had as a title behind my name. I was trying to grow membership. We were a small club. We started out with, I think, 30 members during my year and ended up with around 54 or more than that. We grew quite a bit during COVID, so that was really nice. Well, one of my folks that I wanted to join was the previous mayor of the town of Murphy. I got him and his wife both joining, and he came to all the meetings that he could. I know now as a mayor how busy the schedule is for a mayor, but he came to all, but he was impressed with my leadership skills, and he handpicked me to replace him as mayor and said, by the way, you're going to run for mayor when I'm done. You'll win and you'll have all kinds of opportunities. And all that is because of Rotary. And since then, I'm on about 9 boards. The graphic Joe showed, that's an old graphic. But now I'm on several government board of directors, and I was appointed by Governor Cooper to serve on a commission for volunteerism and community service. So a lot of great opportunities have been opened up because of Rotary.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Well, when I first started with Rotary, this was in 2015. I'd just been promoted to be the new editor of our Greene County Bureau, which is the next county south of where the main office is located. So I was brand new to this town, to this county. I didn't know anyone more importantly, no one knew me. And so when when I joined the Rotary and I was a part of these weekly lunches and meetings, you've got a who's who. You've got the Chamber of Commerce, you've got the local university, you've got the community foundation, you've got the mayor. So it really gave me an opportunity to meet like the pillars of the community, in addition to just getting story ideas, but actually getting to know who these people were, and allowing them to get to know me. And so that's where it was really beneficial, I thought.
Absolutely. And so when we think about, the focus that Rotary has really elevated since 2018, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we think about, how do we make sure that we extend to all and to people, because I'm certainly guilty of not inviting people to Rotary that I see every day. And I've tried to be more intentional about that, because we know that diversity makes Rotary stronger. It makes our ability to reach communities and others even more. So certainly in your profession, being in the media, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts about how we can include others through story as part of Rotary and our work? Guy? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Can you expand on that question? I'm having a hard time understanding what are you quite asking?
Yeah, I think sometimes when we're looking at sort of our communities, we all kind of know who we know and we see who we do, and sometimes inviting others to the table.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. Yeah, there's a real danger there. And I've been guilty of it from time to time, that I rely on my circle to provide me with the types of information I'd like. But we make a cognizant effort to reach out into other areas of the community, and to the point where sometimes I think we may to the detriment of the publication. I don't know. It's always a fine line we're trying to ride here. There are communities that have been underserved in Frederick County, absolutely. And we've been, since the time I've been here, 14 years, we've been absolutely reaching out harder than I think previously to those communities. It's just something you have to be conscious of and keep doing.
Thank you for that. Well, and absolutely. And sometimes we even stop ourselves from telling a story that we think is good because we're like, nobody's going to be interested, right? So, Mike, your thoughts.
Are you asking about how media outlets look for more diverse communities, or how Rotary would be better in recruiting people who might not necessarily be interested?
Both, through telling the story, absolutely, with Rotary. But then also, how do we elevate? Because a lot of the work that we do in Rotary through our service and community projects are projects to create equity, whether it's food or access to water, as you mentioned earlier.
I really think it's the big thing you have to do, whether it's a journalist or whether it's Rotary, is to embed yourself in the community. You have to go beyond your newsroom. You have to go beyond your weekly meeting where you feel comfortable there and meet people, who you may not know, and introduce yourself through that. And I guarantee you they're going to be pretty leery at first. I mean, certainly most people are leery of journalists. As far as Rotary, there's obviously an expense with that. And so, that's something that maybe people can't necessarily afford. But if you're able to explain the benefits of Rotary and how it can help the community, they may be more interested in that. So really, I think outreach is difficult. It gets us out of our comfort zone to a certain extent. But, people aren't going to be walking through that door pitching story ideas. People aren't going to be walking through the door sitting at Rotary meetings. You really have to get out and engage.
Thank you. And Tim, last but not least.
All right. So, that's honestly, I used Rotary to help tell that story a little bit better, because when I first joined Rotary 4 years ago, when we had 30 members, our club was not very diverse. We had 30 members. I think 2 were females. The rest were white men. And Rotary should be a reflection of your community. And to be honest, our community is not very diverse here in Western North Carolina. But I was able to recruit, well, our club is more women now than it is men. And one thing that I did there, recruited really good women or females, and also members of the LGBTQ community also in our club. That was not something that really existed in the past. So recruiting great members who love to work, love to volunteer, love to get their hands dirty. We featured them on the radio broadcast, did interviews with them. And then what that opened up was a door to say, hey, I thought Rotary was just a grumpy old men's club. So there's women in there now. That gave us a chance to talk about, yeah, back in the 80s, this great thing happened. And we kind of opened ourselves up, and people saw that we were diverse now, not just that same old man's club that wrote checks. So I think by changing our club, we had an opportunity to speak about what we've done.
That's wonderful. And how do you think, just kind of curious, all of, three of you are storytellers, and I know there's others on the call tonight that are also storytellers. How would you encourage the Rotarians that are listening to this to really find a way to tell your story as sometimes a way to engage others to tell theirs? Whoever wants to take that. And we can open it up to anybody really on the call. Everybody's been listening to our panelists, but I know everyone kind of brings their own expertise.
Great storytelling. I think of something, going back to when I was learning to be a reporter in college and what teachers taught me back then. Now what I sort of preach to my writers now is the old axiom of show, don't tell. Show me what you're doing. Show me the benefit it's giving in the community. It's one thing to tell me that your club is raising X amount of dollars for a program or grants, but it's something else to tell me how many lives you're affecting. How many more meals is the local soup kitchen able to offer? How many kids are now in an after-school program because of the work you're doing? I think if you could show the story rather than tell the story, that would be much more helpful in getting your story across.
I completely agree with Guy. When I became president of our club, we did good if we would raise $300 for the entire year for coins for Alzheimer's research. And that was one of my passions for Alzheimer's research. So what we did, I wanted to create an amazing year for Alzheimer's research. And I shared my personal story about my grandmother's battle with Alzheimer's, and that I didn't understand what it was when I was a kid. But when I visited her and she forgot how to eat a banana, she ate it like a piece of watermelon. That just brought tears to my eyes. And we also had a member during COVID. He lost his wife to COVID, and her passion was Alzheimer's. So we were raising money in her memory. And so many people knew Jill that passed away. So we wanted to do this in her memory, and it touched so many people because it was so personal to me and that family as well. Instead of raising $3,000 for our tiny club, we raised over $15,000. We did a radiothon where people just drove through the radio station parking lot and threw money at us. People dropping in $100 bills, and they just said, thank you for sharing this, and thank you for looking for a cure for Alzheimer's, because it affected so many families out there.
And how about you, Mike, before I go? I see Chris has got his hand up. Did you want to say anything, Mike, before I go to Chris?
I would just say is my experience in Rotary. What I remember, what I really enjoyed was that, every member each week would pick someone be a guest speaker, obviously, and come in and tell them about their profession and their life, and kind of the Rotary Club would learn something about that person's profession, but that person who wasn't a member would then also learn about us, being a guest as a part of that group. And so, I think it was very mutual in that aspect.
Thank you. How about you, Chris?
Well, guys, thanks for being here and doing this. You guys touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious to hear if you have any specific strategies on how to get your foot in the door, to get these stories into the media, because I think we all know the old school typed press release, but you guys aren't like watching fax machines anymore, and email is, it's nearly impossible to get any reaction through email. And you talked about having relationships, but if you don't have those established relationships, how do you get your foot in the door to get stories out there?
Tim, you want to take that one?
In-person visits always are nice, but I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Club, not just their meetings, but invite them, the media, to your fundraising activities. Let them know in plenty of time to kind of get them excited, and they can cover that as a story from their own voice and how they see it. And they tell their own stories. Having a member of the media in your club is so valuable. But don't be afraid to go and just say, hey, I want to talk to the publisher, or I want to see the owner of the radio station. I have a lot of great things to talk about, and I would love some kind of working relationship. Yeah, because we hate email too.
How about you, Mike?
So I would say is make those personal connections. I mean, I would say the larger the city, the harder that is, but especially small town America, where you have a lot of Rotary clubs, you can walk any newspaper office or any radio office, and probably meet someone immediately. Hopefully they still have an office or a newsroom, but yeah, you can make that personal connection relatively easy. And we do receive emails. I see all the emails that come in. Our fax line, when someone sends in a fax, even if I'm working remotely, it comes over through my email. So we see all those. One thing I would say though, from a personal note, is we prefer email because we can copy and paste it into our system a lot easier than typing it. But unless the person on the other side knows who you are, it may go into that junk box and never be heard from. But as Joe knows, I know Joe from the community, and so he had this big, this wasn't, I don't think this was associated with Rotary, was it? The lake cleanup? Was the lake cleanup associated with Rotary, Joe? So I was the weekend reporter. He pitched this big lake cleanup and water stream cleanup, and I think there were a bunch of different groups involved. And because I know Joe and I knew what he was doing, I personally covered it, took photos and did interviews and wrote the story for our weekend edition.
It was a great story, I might add.
Yeah, coming from, I am in one of the larger markets, and it's just been, it's been difficult to say the least to get any traction. But that's good advice. Thanks.
And one thing I want to add too is one of the newspaper reporters that we have in our club is Abigail, and she is part of our Rotary Reads program. So she loves going to read to the third grade class. So as the district public image chair, I shared a picture of her reading to the classroom on our district Facebook page. That tickled her to death. Like Hamilton said, flattery helps. Make them feel included as well in those stories.
And I'll just add to that is what I've found is sometimes in the larger markets in particular, is that if you connect with a reporter through Twitter first, and sometimes that flattery of like a story that they've covered, and you connect with them through either a comment on the story or then in a direct message, and just say, hey, really appreciated the coverage you did on that story in our community, and here's what's happening here. Then that makes that initial contact, and it makes it easier when you email them later, because then they recognize you, or at least have that initial contact with you. In the larger markets, even now, like some of the huge papers here, the editor isn't even in town. They're now stationed somewhere else, and so they don't even know the market. They're just copy editing what a local reporter is doing, and so it's a little frustrating.
And I'll add too, in small markets like mine, it is nice when we have events, and it's a great way to get free advertising from your radio outlet. Ask them if they'd be interested in being a sponsor, and they can put their name on the good cause while they promote it in their publication. And it says the Rotary Club of Murphy and to invite you to do this. And so again, they feel part of the story and they want to do more to help you.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to relationships. You know, building the relationships, meeting, getting out, and you're right. Sometimes in large markets, it's tough. You know, Frederick's sort of a medium-sized market, but I still have people that walk in my office unannounced, and I don't like to encourage it, but it's very effective. And people who stop me on the streets, I mean, I've had people, you know, they saw me, you know, walking in my neighborhood and give me a story idea. That personal contact cannot be overestimated.
Absolutely. Well, to sort of highlight what one of our districts is doing, we have Joe Peters that is part of this group. He is our district public image chair in 7720. And Joe Peters is a radio guy as well. Want to talk to us about, in true form, he is doing audio, not video. He's messaged me, he doesn't have access to a camera right now. But Joe has been able to develop a PSA announcement that is catching on quite well. Joe, you want to share what you've been up to?
Sure. Yeah, so what we're looking at doing, I run 5 radio stations in coastal North Carolina. And all 4 of them are 100,000 watt stations. So we cover 20 counties with the radio stations that we have. But what we're doing is we have basically a commercial that we put together, much like what one of the gentlemen was talking about earlier. And it's kind of homegrown. It basically just talks about the highlights of why be a Rotarian. But what we want to do with this is begin to highlight members of different clubs and say, hey, you know, what's your Rotary story? Why did you want to become a Rotarian? And then feature those people in vignettes that basically talk about that. There's a lot of clubs that are in 7720 that are also in 7730 that we can highlight. And there's a lot of business owners and networking opportunities that can take place with that. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm using unsold inventory to promote Rotary that each person has. And I do believe that each person has a Rotary story, and making that story personable will also attract people, hopefully, to want to join Rotary.
Well, thank you for that, sir. That was wonderful. And do we have a way of sharing that PSA in the chat box, Don, if you have a chance? That would be cool. And I love that idea because we have a ton of district public image chairs, incoming district public image chairs. And I think that would be an awesome initiative from a lot of our districts standpoint. So if you need it, it's in the chat there. Give you a template, or if you need some help, reach out to Mr. Peters.
Yeah.
So we have a good.
Disregard the Zoom link in there, but I put his contact information, and I will put the text of the PSA.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
That's fine. And again, this is sort of a springboard to what we want to do and generating these stories. So we've got to find the stories first, and got to find people that will either want to be interviewed and to use their voice, or are okay with us using their story and featuring it in an audio message that is not their voice. So
great initiative, sir, and thank you very much for that. And sorry, there's a lot of Joes. So we are coming up to time. So I did want to summarize some of my takeaways that I have picked up from the talk. So we want to seek to be effective. We don't just want to put everything out there. We want to be effective. We need to be observant of the changes in the news and the systems that support it. So you may not want to send your carrier pigeon, although that still works where Mike and I are at. Personal connections have been a driving factor in this entire conversation. So include these folks, make them part of your community. And one other thing I picked up is just be real about it. Don't go looking to be getting your story on if you don't even know the publication. So at least do them the dignity of knowing who you're speaking to, and be a professional as we communicate. These are all professional communicators. I think that just hearing how they communicate and the way that they present themselves and the messages and stories they tell, it gives you a lot of breadth as to how you as a club or a club public image chair should present yourself. Don't be too intimidated. I know I get a little intimidated speaking to the media, but they want to do a good job at and tell good stories. You should just work with them. Have your point person though, and somebody that's comfortable with that conversation. To be loved, to be lovable. Tim, I absolutely love that. Find the trend of what's actually happening, and not just don't just tell your story. Meet the people where they are, Mike, because if you're not out there with them, are you really including them? I really like that. Let me see here. And then last but certainly not least, I really appreciated Joe's tip about unsold inventory. I love that. And I think like we should do like a Wayne's World TV show, but it's Rotary, and we could just cover all of our media bases with we'll buy up all the unsold inventory. But I love that idea of telling these Rotary stories in an effective way, in a real way, right? Rinse and repeat is out there, we know. And just so for those on the call, Rotary does have a lot of these things built already for you. And although we want you to build out and do things in your own way, and as best you can to adhere to our brand, Rotary does have PSAs available for you that you can download if you don't have the right person or the right message or the right thing to get you started. They have press releases that are already kind of there. So you also have our team and your support network with the public image crew at Rotary and Rotary International. So we have a ton of resources for you here to do the good things in the world. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Dawn, my co-host, thank you so much. Billy, our public image chair, thank you for helping support us. I will turn it over to my co-host, Dawn, to close us out. Dawn, thank you so much for everything. And I think give it over to Dawn, and you can close us out. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'll just echo what Joe has said. Thank you for attending this masterclass. And we hope that you have some takeaways that you can share the video once it's curated and sent out to you. And we welcome you back in 4 weeks on February 28th at 6 p.m. All Rotarians are welcome. Everybody have a great evening. Let us know if we can help you.